We open with the myth not as bedtime lore, but as Rome's first political technology. Romulus and Remus aren't just characters. They're a message. Power is taken, not granted. The she-wolf story makes the city feel chosen, but the real core is darker. The founding includes a boundary dispute, and that boundary becomes sacred. Romulus doesn't just kill a brother. He establishes a rule: cross the line, die. That's the first Roman law, before Senate, before legions, before empire. A city that begins by sanctifying a border is a city built to expand borders later. Then we drop the key idea that carries the whole episode. Rome's genius was not violence. Violence is common. Rome's genius is institutionalizing violence, turning raw force into tradition, then tradition into law, then law into legitimacy. We move from myth into the monarchy era and treat it like a training phase. Rome learns infrastructure, public rituals, and power choreography. Then we hard cut into the last king, Tarquin the Proud. We don't need to over-argue every detail. We frame it as the Roman memory of tyranny, whether fully literal or politically useful. The traditional story says the breaking point was the assault of Lucretia by Tarquin's son, and the political backlash becomes a revolution led by elites like Brutus. The key is what Rome learns from this trauma. Not just kings are bad, but unchecked power is existentially dangerous. Then we deliver a psychological insight that hooks modern viewers. Rome's anti-king identity becomes a brand. A society that defines itself by what it hates will build institutions to prevent that hated thing, sometimes at any cost. We explain the Republic like an operating system. Two consuls share executive power, so no single man becomes king. Short terms prevent permanence. Assemblies vote. Magistracies rotate. And above everything sits the Senate, technically advisory, practically dominant because it holds experience, prestige, and continuity. This isn't democracy in the modern sense. It's an elite-managed republic that sells the idea of shared governance, while keeping real control concentrated. Now we introduce your identity tension line in story form. Rome advertises freedom, but builds hierarchy. Patricians and plebeians don't start as equals. The Republic is engineered to prevent tyranny from above, yet it can still produce oppression below. That contradiction is what makes the story feel modern and sharp. Here we show how the Republic handles emergencies. When war or chaos threaten survival, Rome doesn't debate forever. It centralizes power. The Romans created offices that could override normal checks for a limited time. The point is not the office name. The point is the philosophy. Order first, purity second. Rome is willing to bend its ideals to survive. This part should feel like a thriller. Institutions tighten, public fear rises, and suddenly the system that was designed to prevent monarchs becomes capable of producing concentrated authority, legally. That's the anti-king system, revealing its shadow. We explain why Rome keeps winning. Rome can lose battles and keep fighting. That requires manpower management, discipline, and an institutional approach to war. We introduce the idea that Rome's army evolves with its enemies, shifting away from rigid fighting styles toward more flexible unit structures over time, especially as it faces rugged Italian terrain and different opponents. This is where we begin planting the seed of the manipular development without drowning in jargon. Rome's military becomes a social engine. Service brings status, loot, and political credibility. War isn't an event, it becomes a rhythm. And once war becomes a rhythm, expansion becomes inevitable. This is where you show Rome's true genius: integration. Rome doesn't always annihilate. It often restructures. It builds a network of allies, colonies, and graded rights that turn former enemies into manpower. Some communities gain citizenship, others get partial rights, others remain allies, but tied into Rome's military demands. This creates a self-reinforcing system. Each victory increases Rome's resource base for the next war. We spotlight the Latin relationship and the shift where Rome stops being first among equals and becomes the center of gravity, especially after conflicts that restructure the Latin world. You don't need a long battle list, just show the mechanism. Alliance obligation roads, legions, move faster, Rome wins again. We dramatize the forging period. Rome doesn't just expand. It gets humbled, learns, adapts. The Italian peninsula is not easy terrain. Opponents don't fight like neat city-state armies. They fight in mountains, in surprise engagements, in messy campaigns. This pressure forces Rome to become flexible, tactically and politically. We connect this directly to the Republic's deeper identity. It is a learning system. When Rome loses, it studies. When it wins, it copies what worked. This is also where you reinforce the core thesis. Rome is becoming a machine because machines iterate. Rome's southern conflicts bring it into contact with a different military world and larger strategic stakes. The key story beat: Rome proves it can absorb punishment and continue. Even when it faces opponents with elite tactics and reputations, the Roman advantage is endurance, political endurance, manpower endurance, and system endurance. You frame the lesson. Some victories are too expensive. Pyrrhic victory becomes a concept because winning can still destroy you. Rome internalizes the opposite. Even if it loses today, it can outlast you tomorrow. That's a terrifying strategic identity to give a state. We zoom out and reveal the real consequence of Rome's Italian dominance. It now touches a Mediterranean system dominated by Carthage. Carthage is commercial, maritime, wealthy, and experienced at naval war. Rome is land-based, disciplined, and system-driven. These are two different models of power. And when two models compete for the same space, war becomes inevitable. We end episode 1 by making the viewer feel the scale change. Rome was a regional machine. Now it's about to become a Mediterranean monster. Rome's Italian dominance slams into the sea world. A local dispute in Sicily becomes the match that lights a Mediterranean wildfire. This is where your theme intensifies. Rome discovers that war can pay for itself. Land, taxes, ports, leverage. Once a state tastes that kind of profit, it stops thinking like a city and starts thinking like a system. First Punic War opens 264 BC. The war isn't about Sicily. It's about what Rome becomes when it wins. But there's a problem. Carthage owns the sea, and Rome doesn't even have a name. Rome does what machines do. It adapts. It builds fleets, trains crews, and turns a weakness into a factory. Your emotional angle. Rome doesn't need to be the best today, only better tomorrow. This is how the First Punic War becomes one of antiquity's biggest naval struggles. Rome's real weapon isn't genius. It's repetition. And repetition has a cost. Storms, sinkings, mass death. Rome starts bleeding at sea. Make this part feel exhausting. 23 years. Families replaced. Fleets rebuilt. Rome learns a terrifying truth. Endurance can beat skill. By the end, 264 to 241 BC, Rome wins and takes its first major step beyond Italy. Rome didn't win because it was stronger. Rome won because it refused to stop. And Carthage remembers. The next war won't be on the sea, it will be inside Italy. In Iberia, a Carthaginian commander raises a boy among soldiers. The boy grows up hearing stories of Roman aggression. His name is Hannibal. When Rome pressures Carthaginian influence in Spain, the fragile balance snaps. War begins again in 218 BC. But this time, Carthage does not plan a naval contest. It plans shock. Rome controls the sea, so Hannibal avoids it. He marches through mountains, through snow, through starvation, through terrain that kills men before battle does. Elephants descend from the Alps into Italy. No Roman expected this. Italy was supposedly safe. Now a foreign army stands inside it. The psychological damage is enormous. Rome's promise of security fractures. On a hot day in southern Italy, Rome deploys overwhelming force. Hannibal surrounds it. What follows is slaughter. Tens of thousands die. Senators fall. Allies reconsider loyalty. Cannae is not just defeat. It is trauma. Rome faces a question every power eventually faces. Are you strong only when winning? Or are you strong when broken? Rome does not surrender. It absorbs the blow. Rome stops chasing decisive victory. It stretches the war. It avoids direct confrontation. It bleeds Hannibal slowly. It attacks Carthaginian supply lines. The war becomes patience versus brilliance. Brilliance dazzles. Patience suffocates. Hannibal wins battles. Rome wins time.